What is up, everybody? Welcome back to your Average Joe Sports Network. I'm your host, Drew Hoover, and today we'll be discussing the interior defensive linemen in this year's NFL Draft. I am actually excited to get into this because at the beginning of the process, I didn't know how much depth there was, and honestly, I was almost planning on maybe skimming through this and getting to the other positions. But since the scouting combine and the Senior Bowl and now the pro days, we've actually been able to, have more information on these defensive tackles and interior defensive ends. And now I actually have a list to present to you, and I can't wait to get into this. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please click that subscribe button. And Anthony Garcia is your man if you have any graphic design or video production needs. His link is in the description below, opticventure.com. And now for the first interior defensive lineman on my board, Devonte Wyatt, defensive tackle from Georgia. At 6'3", 315 pounds, he was first team All-SEC and second team All-American. He has the strength to get the leverage and push that he needs, and has a surprising, quick moves and stunts to get off his blocks, and he can play against the pass as well as the run. My NFL comparison to him is Kevin Williams, the defensive tackle for the Minnesota Vikings in the mid-2000s. When I look at Devonte Wyatt, this is a man that I think was obviously overshadowed by his teammate Jordan Davis. And you look at players like, Nakobe Dean, everyone's talking about Javon Walker. But I think Devonte Wyatt has made himself known this offseason through the Senior Bowl, through the scouting combine. Now people are starting to look at him as the number one defensive tackle in this draft. And now for the second interior defensive lineman on my board, Jordan Davis, defensive tackle from Georgia. At 6'6", 340 pounds, he won the Outland Trophy as well as the Chuck Benderek Award. He was first team All-SEC and first team All-American. Obviously, the first thing that stands out to anybody is his impressive size. And it's because of that impressive size, a lot of people can say that he could take on double teams and plug up those gaps, which, if you're familiar with the early definition of what a defensive tackle was supposed to be for, it really was to take care of that extra protection on the line of scrimmage so that linebackers at the second level can get to the ball carrier. And I think Jordan Davis can do that just well. My NFL comparison to him is John Henderson, the former defensive tackle for the Jaguars and the Raiders. And I got to be honest with you guys, I am only bringing him up so we can bring this video in honor of the Oscars, what happened with Chris Rock and Will Smith.
Oh, Joe, that ain't good enough. Come on, Joe. Thank you, baby.
I have noticed sometimes that even though he's a big guy, it doesn't mean he's unblockable. I think a guy can get a hold of him and lock him in there. But he did show some quickness and athleticism at the scouting combine that honestly I didn't see on the tape. So he's definitely going to be a first-round pick. I just don't know. He might be one of those guys that, like we talked about Kevin Thibodeau, might be a guy that lives up to the hype. I mean, he's probably one of the most exciting defensive players of 2021, or he's going to end up being a bust heading to the NFL. And now for the third interior defensive lineman on my board, Travis Jones, defensive tackle from UConn. At 6'4", 330 pounds. This is a guy that actually shares some of the best qualities of the top two on my board. When it comes to Jordan Davis, he can take on those double teams as well as plug up the gaps. And like Devonte Wyatt, he can get that leverage and push and has underrated quickness and athleticism. When I look at NFL comparisons to him, I think of Sam Adams, a guy from the 90s and early 2000s. Spent his first few years with the Seattle Seahawks. I mostly remember him from the Buffalo Bills. So when I look at Travis Jones, a lot of people I don't think were really maybe sure about him, but then he showed up at the Senior Bowl. Him and Jermaine Johnson II were arguably the MVPs throughout the week. And then talk about the the scouting combine, and then he just had his pro day. Now you all of a sudden hear experts saying that it's a guy that may end up slip into the bottom half of the first round. And at number 4, we actually have a tie at defensive tackle. Now, if you guys watch my running back prospect videos, which by the way I recommend you go ahead, check out my channel. I'll maybe even put it in the link in the description below. That there was a tie at number 5, and the reason was because guys like Jerome Ford and Tyler Batty were so similar when it comes to their strengths that I decided to pair them up at number 5 in my video. So in this case, I have 2 guys that have similar strengths, and so they're going to be tied here at number 4. So who is the first defensive tackle tied at number 4? Logan Hall, defensive tackle from Houston. At 6'6", 275 pounds, he was first team All AAC. Just his ability to get penetration, to squeeze in through protection and disrupt the play. His ability to use power moves, his punches, and also use swim moves. He always finds a way to get to the ball carrier. There are some weaknesses that some experts have said that he is, some people say he's not very good at taking on double team, and also the fact that he's a little too high. And what I mean by that is that when you're teaching a defensive lineman and an offensive lineman, it's all about trying to get to their center, and particularly the center of their shoulder pads. And they say that if you can get control of that, if you can control their center, you can control the matchup. And so in this case, when they say Logan Hall gets too high, and that means he leaves him vulnerable for an offensive lineman to take control of his center and control him wherever he needs to go, and even take him away from the gap. So it's really important for Logan Hall to get lower, so that way it leaves his center less vulnerable for an offensive lineman to get a hold of him. My NFL comparison to him is Solomon Thomas, who was drafted, I believe, number 3 overall by the San Francisco 49ers a few years ago. Spent some time with the Raiders, and now he just signed with the New York Jets. And similar to Logan Hall, they both switched off from being defensive end to defensive tackle. I think, in my opinion, he best suits as an interior defensive lineman. Alright, so who's tied with Logan Hall? That is Perrion Winfrey, defensive tackle from Oklahoma. At 6'4", 292 pounds, he was second team All Big 12. Same strengths, same weaknesses. Both have the ability to disrupt the line of scrimmage and pretty much break down a play with their penetration, but also struggle with double teams. The thing about Perrion Winfrey is that he's actually, been able to climb up the boards this offseason, starting at the Senior Bowl, particularly, the Senior Bowl game. That was, I think, when really people started to notice him. And now some people are saying that he might sneak into the bottom of the first round. I would say probably he's still a day 2 guy, but he's definitely climbed up the board considering where he probably would have been, maybe round 4, I would say, before. And now you're talking about maybe late round 2, early, round 3. My NFL comparison to him is Quentin Jefferson, the defensive tackle who was with the Raiders last year, really had a breakout year, and now he has signed a deal with the Seattle Seahawks, and they desperately needed some depth at the line position. So Perrion Winfrey, like I said, both these guys, Perrion Winfrey and Logan Hall, are very close. But I would say if I see one of these two go in the first round, I guess it would be Perrion Winfrey. But again, I think that's a stretch right there. I think both Logan Hall and Perrion Winfrey should be seeing them coming off the board sometime in day 2. And those are my top 5 defensive tackles or interior defensive linemen. Now, if you're confused why I didn't do number 5, I think technically the way it works is that when you have a position tied, it usually consists of, if the tie was broken, someone would have to be number 4 and number 5. So in this case, if I were to talk about the next person in line, it would actually be the 6th defensive tackle or interior defensive lineman on my board. But anyway, the interesting thing about evaluating these defensive tackles is, especially when you look at this league, there's so many defensive coordinators and defensive schemes that are coming in, and they're saying we want to be aggressive, we want to be tough, but we also want to fit, the talents of these players and just put them in the right position. And a lot of that has to do with, multi-look defenses. What used to be just, unique to, like I said, the Patriots, for example, all of a sudden you're seeing it all around the league. You're seeing it with the Rams, and you look at some of the new defensive coaches that have come in that have said, like I said, the things that I've said. Aaron Glenn said that when he became the defensive coordinator for the Lions last year. Jonathan Gannon also said that. And then you look at this year, Mike Caldwell said that when he became the coordinator for the Jaguars. There's, like I said, there's so many, defenses that are just, looking for multi-looks, and therefore they're looking for players that may be less old school and more versatile. I mean, this NFL is becoming more fast, more athletic, and, they're more and more open to players that can do multiple positions. So maybe that was part of the reason why Jordan Davis wasn't considered a first-round pick, even though he was the top defensive player in college football, is because he was more of an old school traditional version of the defensive tackle. But I still think that there's use for these defensive tackles in this NFL, especially, there's still guys out there that run a traditional defensive front, especially if you look at Houston. Lovie Smith, the head coach, is also going to still run that defense, and so expect him to run the similar type of defense that he ran when he was in Chicago, so anyway, that's a little off topic right there. But those have been my top 5 interior defensive linemen or defensive tackles. Can't wait to get to the linebackers and the defensive backs. I think that's where it really gets juicy. I'm your host, Drew Hoover, and have a good day, everybody.